Hey, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. It's good to meet you. And if you're a returning visitor, welcome back. It's been a while since I've posted. So it's been about 4 months since I posted my last video, which is when I finished up my right wing for my Sonex. And in that time, I've completed my left wing, which is sitting on the rack now. It's ready to go. So if this is not your first time here, you probably know that I like to dabble in a lot of things, not just building my airplane, but also a lot of electronics and things like that. So let me talk about a few other things that I've been working on as well. I've done a few videos on the MakerPlane EFIS system. You can see it here. It's called pyEFIS, and it's just an open source, free to use EFIS program that runs on Python over. Typically, you're going to run it on a Raspberry Pi or some other single board computer. Maybe something a little more beefy would be a good choice. It has a good primary flight display here. You can see it's got an attitude indicator. It's got speed tapes and the altitude indicator here. One of the things I've been struggling with is finding a sensor that could be used for an attitude indicator. And I've tried several home brewed type things. And then I thought to myself, this problem's already been solved with the RC market. And so what I've done is taken a fairly new flight controller for a fixed wing remote control aircraft. Inside of this box, there is a Speedy Bee F405 wing, which is specifically designed for fixed wing RC aircraft. And I've connected it also. There's a GPS puck here on the top that also has an integrated magnetometer. Actually, let me pull this apart so I can show you what's inside. So inside of this box, you'll see that there's a Speedy Bee F405 wing flight controller. Additionally connected to that is this small GPS module here that has a connector that goes up and plugs into the front of this board here. This has a GPS module as well as a magnetometer inside to be able to give you a heading reference. There's another connector here that plugs in here, this gray, black, and white set of wires here that plug into a little microcontroller board back here made by Adafruit. This is the Adafruit Feather M4 CAN board. The cool thing about this board is that it has an ARM Cortex M4 chip on it, which is pretty high powered. It can do floating point math and some pretty high-end calculations, but it also has an integrated CAN bus module built into it, which is pretty neat. I've taken the serial data that comes off of the F405 board, and then collecting it here onto this Adafruit board. I then am able to publish CAN data out through this purple and pink wire here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this box back together so I don't get any short circuits. And then I'm going to plug my DB9 connector into my CAN bus board in the back of this little display thing that I've put together here. And you should be able to see attitude indications coming through my pyEFIS screen. Okay, with the screws all put back into place on my box here so it doesn't fall apart while I'm trying to work on this. I'm going to go ahead and set this into place here. Just temporarily. It's got some little screws coming through here to hold it in place so it doesn't tip anywhere. And then I'll just go ahead and plug this into any one of these available CAN bus slots here. And then come around to the front. And momentarily you should see, you just saw that it popped up to north. It was sitting at about 33 degrees or something of north, and now it's at north. And if I turn it, you should see that the compass rose turned. If I tip it to the side, you can see that it stays level with the horizon as I do so. Just like it would in an aircraft. Now, I will note that this has not been flight tested yet. I'm not sure how well the Speedy Bee board actually works on a fixed wing design. I assume it should be fine. It's being used by other people in the RC world, but I haven't tested it in a real airplane. That brings up another good point, though. I don't want to have to carry all of this into an airplane with me to go test this. And so another thing that I've been working on is a way to shrink this all down into something much smaller than this. And so the next thing I'll demonstrate here is I made a little EFIS screen that runs on my phone. on an Android device. So let me pull that out really quick too. So obviously this Adafruit board here also has a USB device. That's what you use to program it. I just used the Arduino IDE in order to write the code out to the board here. That can also be used to send serial data from the board over USB into something else. And so what I've done is I've written an app that runs on my phone here. That it's just a very simple EFIS screen. Basically, it's just an attitude indicator. It does have a speed and an altitude tape, but I don't have any of that configured to run on the Speedy Bee board yet. This was more like a proof of concept just to see if I could get it to do anything at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug in my USB cable here from the device into my phone. And it should automatically open up an app here that I've written. And there you go. So there's a very simple EFIS screen that runs on the board. It's currently sitting on its side, so it's going to look a little funny. But if I were to turn the board side to side, up and down, theoretically, if you were in an emergency situation and you didn't have a heading indicator for some reason or an attitude indicator, you could potentially just set this up on your phone like this and use it as a backup or something. I don't know. Mostly I just wanted to be able to test this board without having to carry the big clunky Raspberry Pi enclosure there, and just be able to have this sitting up on the dash of the airplane, and be able to plug my phone into it. So it's a nice, small, easy package to use, all at once. So there you go. Another project that I've been working on. You can tell I like to dabble a bit. And then a couple other things as well. 4 months is a long time. So a couple other things I've been working on. I've showcased this before as well on my YouTube channel. This is my home-built angle of attack sensor. If you don't know much about this, I'll go ahead and put a card up here. Go ahead and click on that if you're interested in learning more about this. So let me power this on really quick. I've made some updates to the code, and that's kind of all I wanted to talk about here is kind of the changes that I've made, because that's something I recently did as well. Using this indicator here, you can see that the angle changes depending on where this wind vane is. And if you get close enough, it'll start to squawk at you and tell you that it's not happy. Down. Start saying nose down. Nose down. Nose down. Nose down. So the changes that I've made to the software are, number one, nose down. There's a mute button now. This button used to change to a different type of indicator. I wasn't happy with that indicator. I like this sort of analog version of it where you can actually see where the wing is, as opposed to having lights that flash up in a pattern. This is much easier to read, in my opinion. Secondly, I noticed when I was doing some flight testing a while back that it seemed like with the flaps out and the flaps in, obviously it changes the shape of the wing, so it makes a difference what your angle of attack is, whether your flaps are engaged or not. And so what I've done is I've added a second ring on here, one that says flaps on there. If you look really close, I hope I can get that into focus. And then on the outside ring, that was just the one that was there already, which means you have to calibrate two different numbers. So if we go back to the aircraft page here, I've added a way to set up your danger angle, which is your critical angle of attack, and your danger angle with flaps. And that will actually change where the red marks line up on your indicator. Depending on if I want to do this manually, I can just tap on use current to change the angles that are on here. So I'll go ahead and tip up the wind vane here, and then I'll tap on use current. And that changed from 11.8 to 19.1. So it should show at 19.1 degrees from level. So if you look here, you can see that red and yellow area here has changed on the outside ring, but not on the inside ring. That's different. So if I go back here, and I can now edit and change, and then I'll use my area with flaps. If I tip that up a little bit higher still, let's say we'll make it 25 degrees or something like that. And if I go back to my indicator now, you can see that the flaps have moved slightly, so you can see a difference there. So Depending on whether your flaps are engaged or not, you can see at a glance which angle you're getting close to in terms of your danger angle or your critical angle of attack. And then one other addition that I made as well, it's probably not a good idea to go out and calibrate this unless you have somebody else doing it for you. But even then, just pushing a button when you think is the right time is not necessarily the best way to do it. So what I've done is I've added a way for it to auto-calibrate. And so if I, again, open up the Edit Save button here, which enables all of the controls on here. If I tap right here where it says auto-calibrate, what it does is it disables this button so I can no longer manually do it. And then if I tip it up, you can see this number only changes once it's reached a higher level than what it was previously set at. So right now it's 20.6. It's not going to change again until I tip it higher than that. And the idea is that once you've reached the highest critical angle, that's when the stall will break. And that's when you'll, at that point, your nose is going to go back down, and then your angle of attack is going to decrease again. So it'll measure the highest angle of attack that you've reached while this is enabled. I can turn that back off, and then if I go back to my indicator, you can see that it's moved it up a little bit again. And so I've done that for both the flaps and no flaps area here. You can also do this for if you have your flaps engaged to go out and do an automatic. So we'll just tip this up even higher, go up to 31.7 it looks like. Turn it back off, and then if I go back to my indicator, the flaps have now popped up even higher. So I thought that was a pretty good update. Feel free to leave in the comments if you think that's cool or not, or if you have any better suggestions. I'm happy to consider them. I probably won't change them. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, but if somebody comes up with something that's a way better way to do this, I'm happy to listen and maybe would implement that. And then finally, the last thing that I've been working on is, while this is nice, it gives you a very good measurement here. One thing I'm not a big fan of is the idea of a mechanical part. It gives you a very good reading, but eventually the bearings inside of here could become rusted, or after a while, this might become more brittle and, the vane busts off, and then, you might not have the reading that you need to have. And so another thought was to look at an air pressure differential sensor. The way that this one works is you've got a set of tubes here. They both go up with a couple of tubes inside of here. There's a pressure differential sensor inside of there. If you're looking at this straight on, you can see that the hole here is much bigger at this angle than it is down here because it's, kind of twisted down. So you've got, about half the size of a hole here. And the idea is that the higher you tip your wing, the more and more this bottom inlet opens, and the smaller the top one closes until you get to the point where you're 45 degrees difference between the two. And knowing that differential between pressures can actually tell you, what your angle of attack is. So a couple of things about this that I'm not really happy with. The way that it's set up right now is if I'm sitting at not moving, just sitting on the ramp right now, for example, with this being set at 90 degrees and with no air pressure here and no pressure here, they come up as being equal, which once you're in flight, this should have a higher pressure on it than the lower one in order to get you a good reading. Ideally, I think that I would like to have it be a 45-degree angle up and a 45-degree angle down. And then that way, when you're sitting still, or if you're flying just straight and level, it'll be close to zero pressure difference between the two. Now, one issue that presents is if I'm flying along through the rain and this is tipped up at a 45-degree angle, my upper one and the lower one is down at 45 degrees. If I'm flying through the rain, will this port get rain up inside of it? And that does make me a little bit nervous, which is why I originally designed this with it going out straight. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm not really sure what the best option is. My thought is to go 45 up and 45 down, and then make sure that my actual sensor inside is high enough up inside of here that there's no concern that the air is going to be pushed up inside of here and then cause the water to get pushed all the way up into the sensor and damage it. Now that shouldn't happen. I mean, it's a very small run inside of here coming back to about here before it hits a tube that goes up to my sensor up inside of here. And and the air pressure should be the same since water doesn't compress. The air hitting it will just hit the water on the one side if there is water in there and push on it just the same as it would on the other end of it. And that should, in theory, still create the same amount of pressure on the other side, minus a slight bit because of the mass of the water that might have to be moved as well from the ram air hitting the front of this. Anyway, I'm not super happy with this one yet. Like I said, there's a lot more design work that would need to go in this. It certainly hasn't been flight tested or anything. This is just sort of proof of concept. Let me go ahead and pull the batteries out of this other one, and I'll show you how it works with the app that's on the phone as well. All right, so the batteries are now in place. It's the same process here. I'll turn on the power on the side of this, and it'll begin to flash. And then I'll go back over here to my app again. I'll just do a scan, and it's already picked it up. So I'll hit stop and then connect. And I actually have this one programmed to use a different one on my aircraft. So you can add multiple aircraft to the app. In this case, I set one up for pressure. Anyway, it's good to go. If I hit indicator now, you can see right now it's set to 0. If I were to blow on this bottom tube down here, you should see this rise. So the same thing happens here. If I were to go to the aircraft page, and if I were to say, let's just use current, it puts everything back to 0. And if I were to set this for auto-calibrate, so basically with flaps in place or without flaps in place. So I've done about a 5 degree, I don't know how close this is. I've got a multiplier running inside of here that was just a guess. I'm not really sure how close that is to actual angles, but it's a number, which is basically what you need. So if I go back to my indicator here, you can see that the flaps, the no flaps outer ring here, it has changed. The inner flap is still set to 0. If I go back to my aircraft here, go to edit, and then calibrate with flaps, and we'll set this a little bit higher than the last one. Go back to the indicator, and there you can see that the version with the flaps is actually up a little bit higher now. Alright, so that basically wraps up this video. Just like I said, kind of an update of things that I've been working on for the last couple of months. The only other thing that I'll do another video about recently, just last week I think it was, my flight instructor invited me to go out for a flight with him. He has a TBM 850, which is a really cool turboprop aircraft. And it was great. He took me out for a nice little flight in it. We headed over to Atlantic City and back. So I brought along some cameras. Might be fun to do a little video of that as well in the next couple of weeks whenever I get a chance to do some editing. Anyway, let me know if this video was worthwhile to you. If you see anything on there that you'd like to see more information about, feel free to drop a comment, and I'll see if I can do a video to describe things or answer your comments or whatever. If you've enjoyed this video or any of my other videos, please consider subscribing and, you know, like, comment, all that stuff, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. See ya.